did he respond, or did he kind of
Somebody's got their volume needs to mute. Who is that? There you go. All right. Well, Kufar, Akbar, everybody, welcome to another edition of the Cross and the Crescent discussion group. And somebody still has a hot mic. Who is this?
No.
Who is it? Who is it? There. Okay. It might have been you, Paul.
I think it might be me. I think I've just muted it. I think it was me.
It's you and that Macintosh computer.
That's
what it is. I'm blaming the brand. Okay, well, welcome to the show, everybody. And a couple admin things before we get rolling on today's show. We were out last week. If you don't know why we were out, we had, I didn't have any power here at the house. We had a windstorm come through the state. We had 75-mile-an-hour straight line winds, and it blew down trees. It blew down power lines. It blew down. Well, it didn't blow down this CAFR. I was still standing, but it was blowing everything sideways in the state, and we were without power for about not quite 3 days. I have a small generator, so we were able to plug in the refrigerator and the freezer, so the food didn't spoil, but we were using those little, as a matter of fact, I still have my headlamp here where I put the headlamp on it. I wear that around the house. I can see better with that thing on than you can with the lights on. But next week also, we were going to be out because it is my granddaughter's first birthday, and Papa, if I want to keep, hold on. Okay, I'm going to watch this, folks. I'm going to keep this. If I want to keep this sign right here, I have to go to the birthday party, and the birthday party is Sunday afternoon. So anyway, so we won't be here next Sunday. One other thing that I wanted to bring up was if you guys get a chance, go over to Bob the Builder's channel. Bob, I think it's Bob at Speaker's Corner, I think is the name of his channel. But I had an opportunity to go on there yesterday. And we discussed the history of Mecca, or not the history of Mecca. We discussed the Islamic rebuttal to Mecca and the lack of evidence for it. And we talked about we talked about this about a month ago on the show, where this idea that Ptolemy mentions Mecca is proof that Mecca existed in the 7th century. And the bottom line is that it didn't. And I took that slideshow that we did a month ago, and I spent some time on it and revamped a lot of it. And it was a knockout blow. It really was. And we were able to clearly demonstrate not only that Ptolemy does not mention Mecca, but when we start talking about there's nobody, and when I say nobody, there's nobody in all of those ancient writings that existed. Because think of when Pliny when Ptolemy was in charge of the the library in Alexandria. He had access to all of the ancient cartographers, geographers, and all the writings of the locations of all these places that were in Arabia. For centuries, people have gone down there and explored. And he had access to it. And he did. And when they start saying, oh, it's a Makaraba, that's a lie. That's a lie from the pit of hell. And the reason why is because when you use Ptolemy's coordinates, because you use meridian mapping, when you use those coordinates, places Makaraba east of Yathrib or Medina. And if you look on a map, Mecca is south and west of Medina. So the bottom line is that this Makaraba shtick does not work and never has. And after that show, I hope we could just refer people over there and say, well, it never will. But it was a good time. And we're going to be bringing Bob to this show in May. We're going to go through some clips from the EF Dawa channel. So, that, you know what, Chris, I see Chris just showed up. Hey, Mr. Chris, how are you? It's good to see you here, brother.
G'day, sir. How you doing? God
I'm
bless.
great. Yes, you too. You always, I hear you're really good friends with those girls over there at EF Dawa. I was thinking maybe you could send me maybe a couple clips from them if you have any.
What type of clips would you like?
Any type of clips. I mean, there's quality entertainment any way that you I mean, if you just maybe a link and say, hey, watch this one or watch this one. Because I mean, I don't know how much time you spend watching those guys, but you know, I watched one of their videos and it took me probably a good part of 3 days to get through it. It was just, you really said this, you really said this, you really said that. And it was that, what's the leprechaun? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I did not mean to say that.
Yeah, the red-headed leprechaun, Hamza.
Hamza. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I'm sorry. I did not mean that, but that's what a lot of people call.
You didn't say it. I did.
Right. I appreciate that.
Anyway.
Yeah. Okay. I'll be in contact with you on that. So today, what I want to do is I want to talk. I was thinking about this topic for a long time. I've been thinking about this topic because when we engage Muslims, what medium it is, whether we're doing it on Facebook, whether you're doing it through Clubhouse, or you're doing it, here in YouTube, or whatever the medium you're using, you basically hear a standard set of assertions about Islam. So what I want to do is today I want to take a look at what those assertions are and how they are what I call Muslim myths, the mythology that we are told. So let me bring this up here. I don't know. I didn't run this by Paul. Paul's usually a pretty good judge of good topics to bring. And I didn't bring this one in front of him, but these are the official lies that we were told. Now, when we look at this topic,
you should bring up that picture again, because like Muslims, they like photos of Muhammad. So
okay. Yeah, the next time somebody wants to take me out,
so the funny truth is, some Muslims say it's okay, some Muslims say it's not. They can't decide amongst themselves.
Well, who was that guy that was in France that was a teacher? He got his head cut off. For
Samuel Paty.
Charlie.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but because there's not supposed to be photos of Muhammad from that time period, is there? There's
the issue is Shiites say it's okay, Sunnis say it isn't.
Yeah,
That's what it comes down to. Hebdo is not because bomb as a hat.
Okay, well, regardless, which one is? Oh, he's the one. Okay, this would be Muhammad right here, right?
Yeah, that's supposed to be Muhammad.
Right. That is supposed to be a.
If that's now, is that a hori or is that a? No, I can't see the.
Okay, all right, guys, let's get off the picture. Let's.
That's Gabriel.
Yeah, I think that's supposed to be Gabriel.
The trees look bad in the background. I mean, it's like you think an artist they could do proper trees, but it's like a kind of
Well, I know that you're not
let's get into these myths.
Okay, so let's talk about what a myth is. Now, this is a tradition of a story that is used to describe a practice or a belief or a natural phenomenon. And myths are normally developed in order to do this. And so let's look at a couple examples of these. And when I was looking for these, I was actually kind of surprised at this, because some of these I actually believed. Like this first one, it says bulls get angry when they see the color red. Well, bovines are colorblind. So to say that they get angry when they see the color red is simply not true. They get angry when you wave something in front of them and they run at it and they can't hit it. And then you start sticking sharp metallic objects into their back. That's when they do get angry. I can tell you that. So don't be doing that with bulls. We only use 10% of our brain. Well, this is not true. Well, this may be no. Don't go there. Do not say.
I was fixing to say
followers of Muhammad. I'm not going to say that.
Muslims use half of that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. 5%. But that's a misnomer. George Washington had wooden teeth. That's not true. He had teeth that were false, but they weren't made out of wood. The Salem witch trials, women were burned at the stake. Women were not burned at the stake at the Salem witch trials. They were hung, but they weren't burned at the stake. As a matter of fact, I think they crushed one of them, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe even drowned another one. And I teach that too. I can't remember exactly how they all died. And they killed. And you sit there and you tell this to a class. You say, and they killed 19 women at the Salem witch trials, and they also killed a dog. And that's when the kids go, oh, they killed it. Look, they just killed 19 human beings, but you're upset because they killed a dog? Really? Yeah, that tells you where the mindset of children is. In 1492, everybody thought the world was flat, and that is not true. That is actually a lie that was developed by, who was that guy? Washington Irving, I think was the name of the guy that developed that lie. And it was mainly an attack on the Catholic Church, or a way to, this is what the Catholic Church, we follow what the Catholic Church teaches. We'd still believe that the world was flat, and we would never have been able to go out and explore and find it all water. We couldn't do all these things. And that's not true. That's a myth. Marie Antoinette did not say, let them eat cake during the French Revolution. That's not true. The forbidden fruit at the Garden of Eden was an apple. I think most of us here in the chat would understand that that's not true either. It was just the tree of good knowledge. And sugar causes hyperactivity in children. Now, to be honest with you, I'm not sure that that's not a myth, or that's
I don't think that's a myth. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'd have to say it's a fact.
I
have heard that the forbidden fruit might be a grape.
Yeah. Are you referring to the Hories? Never mind. Hyperactivity in children. If you give give them a soda and they suck down a soda with all the sugar in there and they start spazzing out, I don't know. There might be some type of other causality there or something, but I don't know. I can't get there whether children. But anyway, all right. So let's look at some of the myths that we are told when we engage in these topics. Number one, which would be the standard Islamic narrative, the standard history that we get, that we're told about Islam, which we're going to talk about in depth. The Quran has been perfectly preserved. Today, in 2023, we know that is not true. But if you back that up maybe 15, 20 years ago, there was really no way to know that, and people and Muslims got away with it. It's been perfect preservation. It's the same, not a jot, not a tittle, not a diacritical mark. Everything has been perfectly preserved. Well, we know today, thanks to in large part, we'll get to that. The Quran is a scientific miracle. Okay, we'll talk about that too. Muhammad was a perfect example for all time. Really.
That's a sad statement. No matter who
we will definitely drill down on that one. Oral transmission is a superior form of transmitting ideas. Okay. Well, I'm just telling you, this is what we're told. The science of the hadith. Don't you know that there is a specific science behind trying to determine what is an authentic, a sahih, Hassan, or Daif hadith? And we find that science
To be laughable.
Islam is peaceful. Yeah, okay. And women are respected and elevated in Islam. So we're going to go through these, and if there's some other ones that you guys want to talk about, that's fine. And I'm going to go through these rather quickly because I don't want to belabor the point on these, because a lot of these things that the majority of us already are aware of. There might be a point or two that you're not, but let's just get to this. Okay, Mecca. And this is one of the things that I was explaining yesterday on Bob's channel, is that Islam is like a three-legged stool, just like the Christianity is like a three-legged stool. You got death, deity, resurrection. You take away any of those three elements of Christianity, and the whole thing crumbles and falls upon itself. You take away the deity of Christ, Christianity is not true. You take away the death of Christ, Christianity is not true. You take away the resurrection of Christ, Christianity is not true. So you need all three of those things. And the same thing is true with Islam. In Islam, you need a guy you need a historical figure by the name of Muhammad. You need the Quran to be the perfect word given to Muhammad by the angel Gabriel, by God. And you need, because all of these events happen within a geographic location, a city called Mecca, you need a Mecca. So the bottom line is that we do not have any proof of Mecca. There is no evidence for Mecca in the 7th century. There's no archaeological evidence. There is no geographic evidence. There is no cartological evidence, and there's no manuscript evidence for it. This is only, and plus, Mecca is only mentioned in the Quran one time. I'm not sure if everybody is aware of that. The majority of us is probably aware of that, but it's only mentioned one time. Whereas if you look at the city of Jerusalem, is mentioned hundreds of times, 700 and some odd times, if I'm not mistaken. If somebody wants to Google that for me, how many times is Jerusalem mentioned in the Bible? I like to know what that is.
I think it's 120 times, if I remember right, something to that effect.
Oh, I think it's a lot more than that, to be honest to you.
No, I mean in the Quran.
Oh, Jerusalem?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, because Jerusalem.
No, Jerusalem is not mentioned one time in the Quran. They don't, in the Quran, Jerusalem is not mentioned at all.
Yeah,
I got you, brother Eric.
All right.
So Jerusalem appears in the Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible, 669 times. In Zion, which usually means Jerusalem, sometimes the land of Israel, appears 154 times.
There you
and
go.
That's just in the Tanakh.
Okay, and that's not even included in the New Testament.
Is
I mean, that's
800. Is it 850? Because it depends which version. Is it 815 times? That's what I've got total.
The bottom line, the point I'm trying to make is that it's mentioned one time in the Quran, and this is supposed to be the last revelation given by God to mankind, where all these events supposedly happen. And you look at Jerusalem in the Bible, and how many times, this is supposed to be where, Jesus was crucified, and all these other events were supposedly happen, where Abraham went to sacrifice Ishmael. Look at that. Look at that lie. They told me that I'm repeating already. Not Ishmael, Isaac. He went to sacrifice Isaac. This is all in Jerusalem. So when we look at the number of times it appears in the Quran, it only appears one time. And then when we've had John Isaac on here, he showed us how you just put a squiggly line on the end of that first letter to the word, and it changes the word Becca to Mecca. So it's probably, we think that it might have been just talking about some other location. But anyway, this is Mecca. When we look at Mecca, this is where the Muslims are commanded 5 times a day to pray towards Mecca, the Kaaba in Mecca. 5 times a day, they're required to go through this ritualistic prayer system that they have, that they think that works off all their gigs. And that's supposed to be point towards Mecca. And the problem with that is I pointed out yesterday, using Dan Gibson's Quranic Geography, or not early Islamic Qiblas, this book right here. This is where somebody like Dan Gibson has actually gone out and done the digging in the dirt, and he's figured out that there are no Qiblas within the first 100 years of Islam in these archaeological digs of these early mosques that face Mecca. They're facing the wrong direction. Mm. He makes a case for Petra, and I'm good with that, but they are definitely not facing Mecca. Go ahead.
Because Muhammad should have gone down to 1 one time. I think it was like he like why he went for 5 rather than like 1. He should have done like a one-time praying to Mecca rather than like
Say that again. Muhammad has mentioned what?
No, because it's like 5 times a day. He should have wagered down like lower. He should have got down like
Oh yeah,
Abraham did like one.
Yeah, if he would have been a good businessman, what was he thinking about? Well, didn't it start out like at 50? God tells Muhammad,
Yeah.
you got to pray 50 times a day. You know what?
Oh no, I think it was 100.
100, well, whatever it was unreasonable. There's no way you could do it. You'd spend your entire day doing nothing but praying. You get nothing done, and you would starve to death. So that didn't make any sense.
No,
this is a city. Go ahead.
Because have you seen the recent thing to do with the whole was it the Dome of the Rock? The fact that the Dome of the Rock inscriptions are dated like the 14th century.
I've watched. Was it on Jay Smith and he's had Mel on there, and Mel's gone through a lot of the inscriptions. Yeah, I've watched it passively. I've watched some of those, listened to them, but I haven't really sat down to pay close attention to it. But the Dome of the Rock to me is in my perspective, is just a testament to Antichrist. It isn't. It
is a testament to Antichrist. But the thing is it's interesting because the Crusaders took it over. And he was stating that the only inscriptions. So when the Crusaders took it over, the inscription to do with it, that Jesus is not the Son of God, was a lot later inscription. So he's stating that the fact that maybe happened during the like the Ottoman Empire.
So you're saying like the Crusaders would have destroyed it? Is that what he's saying?
Well, no. Well, the Crusaders took it over. I think during I can't remember what century they took it over, and they would have seen that inscription and they would have done something about it.
Okay.
So
that's probably true because they're not known to playing nice with these guys, so that might be true.
No. So those inscriptions might date from later rather than
they very well may be. Yeah, because it does say not 3. That's one of the inscriptions that is on there. I do know that. And it's like I said, it's something to Antichrist. This is a city that's been cemented over to hide its origins or lack thereof. If you doubt me, you can go ahead and doubt me, but you cannot doubt. Oh my goodness! Come on, what happened here? Hold on. I got this. No worries. Here it comes.
Go get a dig permit there.
Yeah, good luck with that. Good luck getting in the city itself. Okay, so stop screen, present, share screen, share audio, window, ba-bing, ba-boom. There we go. All right. This is, I played this a couple weeks ago. This is Google Earth. And it's of Mecca, and this is the Kaaba right here, and this is a time lapse from 2005 to 2020. Okay, I got to turn the volume down on this. Where's the volume?
There you go.
Can you guys hear that?
It's not a problem, so don't worry about it.
Can you hear that?
Barely.
Okay, it's blowing my ears out. But notice how all of this. Hold on, let me go back here. I'll bring it right back. Notice how all of this is just getting cemented over. They're building everything upon all of this area right here, which would have been a 7th century Mecca. So all of these are pictures taken by Google Earth of the Kaaba, of Mecca. And it's just been completely built upon. Let's go to the end here. Whoops, go to the end. Okay, this is Mecca today. And that was Mecca 20 years ago. So the bottom line is that they have, when we start talking about, okay, there is no archaeological evidence for Mecca from the 20th century or from the 7th century, there's no way you can get around that. That's an absolute fact. I'm trying to do
And
something.
here's the other problem with that is that the clock tower is the fourth tallest building in the world. Do you know how far down they had to dig for the foundation on that thing? And what did they find when they dug on the foundation?
Rocks.
Nothing.
Exactly.
Zero.
And that was one of the points that I brought up, because when you look at Jerusalem, every time they dig in the dirt around Jerusalem, they dig up artifacts. Every time Greece in the year 2000 hosted the Summer Olympics, and they went through this massive renovation and building project within Greece itself. And they had, when they were rebuilding, like let's say a subway or all these other buildings that they were building, they found so many artifacts from their digging in the dirt there. So many artifacts that they didn't have any room in museums anymore. So what they did was, this is kind of ingenious, in their subways they built these display cases. So all of these artifacts that they were digging up, they put in the subway in these display cases. So as you're sitting there waiting for your train, you can sit there and look in these display cases and say, there's something that's 2,500 years old. That's kind of neat. Now think about Mecca. Mecca is supposed to be this city that has existed. Adam and Eve are supposed to be in Mecca. Hello? I mean, that's at least 6,000 years ago, if you want to use Chronicles and the standard biblical timeline. But Abraham and Ishmael were supposed to have built the Kaaba. So you're supposed to have at least a 4,000-year history in Mecca. And when you look at this building project that they've gone through, and they don't have anything, there's nothing there, that's a problem. That is a huge problem. The only thing, Dan Gibson said that he went to an archaeological summit or conference, 3, 4, 5 years ago, and the only evidence that has been discovered in Mecca is from a 12th century Ottoman fort. That is huge. If you do that much building on a city that's supposed to have a 4,000-year history, that is a big, big, big problem. And that's a problem I wouldn't want to have with our Bible. And that's why I love our Bible. Okay. Anybody have anything they want to add to that about Mecca? I beat that dead horse for an hour and a half yesterday. I thought Bob was probably going to lose his mind sitting there listening to me drone on about that. But the bottom line is when we look at Mecca, Mecca has no history. It's like a black hole. When you try to associate a 7th century Mecca and line all that stuff up, it doesn't line up. Because why? It doesn't exist. Okay. Perfect preservation of the Quran. Oh my goodness. Let's see.
It's which Quran?
I'm getting to that, Dominic. Thank you. Yeah. There's over 30. What is it? 37 of them.
Yeah.
38.
Yeah.
Okay. So the Qurans that we have, Dr. Dan Brubaker has found at least 4,000 variants in the few manuscripts that he has studied. And that's just the ones that he's been able to study. That doesn't include all of them that exist. And we remember that famous live stream that Yasser Qadi and Muhammad Ajab did.
Yes, I downloaded it.
Yeah, 2-3 years ago. I mean, that tells you everything that you need to know right there. And Yasser Qadi even admits it has not been perfectly preserved. And I remember there was what's that guy's name?
And
Chris, you debated him. Chris debated him. Chris, what was that guy's? That's that imam's name up in Canada that you debated.
Shabir Ali.
Shabir Ali. There you go. Shabir Ali. They had Shabir. Kenny Bomer had Shabir Ali come to his channel, and they were saying, well, the bottom line is that it's just what did he say? It was.
It's a topic they're scared to talk about. So it comes down.
It is. Different accents. Does that make sense? The different pronunciations. It's the way that the different accents that people. That's the differences right there. That's not true. That's absolutely not true. But they're so bent on keeping this lie that has been told, this Muslim myth that the Quran has been perfectly preserved. You cannot get away from that. What else? Okay, so when we look at the Quran, and this this is where Muslims differ from Christians, because when we start talking about textual criticism of the Bible and we start looking at the different variants that we have in the Bible, we as Christians don't find that problematic at all. And the reason why we don't find that problematic is because we have so many different manuscripts. If we only had one manuscript of the Bible, one ancient manuscript of the Bible, we wouldn't have any variants. And would that be a bad thing? Would we be able to know that that manuscript that we have is the actual Bible that we're supposed to be having today? No. And this is where, as Christians, we don't look at textual variants as being problematic at all. And when we look at all the textual variants that exist, there's not one of them that provides any meaningful impact on our faith. Now, there are some stories like John was it chapter 7 and 8 with the woman caught in adultery, 1 John 5:8, where it talks about the Trinity or whatever verse that is. But there's really nothing in there that would have any type of meaningful impact on our faith. And Muslims don't see that way. And this is why it is so important for them to point these things out to us and say, look, your Bible has all these differences in it. The manuscripts do, and that's because we have 2.5 million pages of New Testament manuscripts in Greek. So it's not a problem for us. And these, like I was saying, these don't impact our faith. Last, what day was that? We were in a conference. That was, I think it was Tuesday. Tuesday, we were on a call with Bob the Builder, and we had all kinds of people on that call. And one of them was Adam Seeker. And Adam Seeker made the comment that one of the main reasons why he left Islam is because of this issue of perfect preservation. And this is cool. It was that debate. He watched that debate between Jay Smith and Shabir Ali, and he was screaming at the television set or the computer or whatever he was watching it on, why don't you do something? Why don't you say something? Why don't you prove this kafir wrong? Well, it comes out that he's not wrong, that there are variants, and we have the copies of these different variants to demonstrate that the Quran has not been perfectly preserved. I don't see why that's a big deal. I mean, do you guys see why that's such a big deal? That
it proves that they have been lied to. I think that's what it comes down to. Somebody has lied to them and told them that, and that's what it comes down to. Some idiot came up with the idea to keep it going.
Yep.
But because the thing is, when I'm like evangelizing on the street, it just destroys their foundation. So, because the thing is, they can't say the Bible is corrupted or things like that. When you say that the Quran's corrupted, like we know the Bible is not corrupted.
It doesn't have to follow. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to follow.
So,
but they can't understand that.
And what's even worse for them is that confirms the Bible, not just the Torah and the Gospel, but it also confirms the Bible.
Yes.
45:16 and 40 verses 43 and 40. 40 verses 53 and 54 confirm the Bible.
Yeah, when I was listening to Adam talk about that, I was actually shocked. I mean, if your faith is that shallow, where it's this is a pillar or this is a main tenet of your faith of perfect preservation, knowing that it's your scriptures have been handled by mankind, imperfect people, and you're going to demand that you're going to have all the way down to the last diacritical mark, and on top of that, diacritical marks did not exist in the 7th century when the Quran was supposedly compiled. So
Eric, you understand why they have to, though, is because their assertion that the Christian scriptures are corrupted deems on them being able to say that their scriptures are not corrupted, that every letter and everything is preserved from the foundation of Islam, from Muhammad. Now, if they were to find out that there was some type of textual variant corruption within to the text, now they have to place their Quran in the same place they're placing the Bible.
Okay, so you're saying that this blows their argument against the Bible out of the water if their own source is not is also when we use the word corrupted, we're talking about a misspelling of a of a name or a word or word order thing. So it's not the same exact thing that they had when it was originally revealed. And so if they can't argue that, then they cannot criticize. So it takes away one of the criticisms of Christianity. Is that what you're saying?
Right now, the biggest argument that the Muslim apologists use for the Bible being corrupted is the textual critical argument when it comes to the New Testament. Now that there's a textual critical argument when it comes to the Quran, they don't have that argument anymore that they can use to say that that's why the Bible is corrupt. Because if they still use that argument to say that the Bible is corrupt, then they are basically saying that the Quran is corrupt as well by using the same standard.
Yeah, and on top of that, the Quran has not gone through textual criticism yet.
Oh, it's fixing to. Well, it is now. It's going through this process now. The all of the findings that I think that are going to be revealed probably have not yet been completely published, but it's getting there. A lot of more and more people are gaining access to these manuscripts.
Can I be a prophet?
Can you be one?
I'm gonna predict. I'm gonna predict that the Muslims, in about 5 years to 10 years, are gonna start using our Christian argument, saying that yes, there is textual variance in the Quran, but it doesn't affect the core Muslim doctrine in the Quran.
Right.
That's going to be their argument, I think.
And my understanding is that the differences don't affect any of their core doctrine. I might be wrong on that.
Oh, you big time wrong on that one.
Oh yeah, definitely big time wrong.
That would be an interesting show. That'd be an interesting show.
Okay, well, tell me one. Go ahead.
Well, in Surah 33:46, I believe it is, in the Hafs version, it would read that Muhammad was shocked. Or in the Hamza's version, it reads that Allah is shocked.
Oh, so it'd be they contradict one another.
Like if Allah is shocked, then He's all knowing.
Well, okay. Well, let me play devil's advocate. Let me act like I'm rad and play you silly kafir. Don't you understand that when Allah was shocked, he was conveying this shockness to the prophet. So Muhammad, of course, is shocked. Why? Because I can see the arguments already, but I get what you're saying.
And it changes the whole theology because it's either Muhammad that's shocked or it's Allah that's shocked. So it does change the actual theology when it comes to the verse. And there's I can think of at least 75 more just like that.
Yeah,
where they create contradictions, or
they are contradictions on who's speaking, who's receiving information.
There was one that was done the other day where it was talking about Pharaoh and how Pharaoh said that this is a magician, and then his magician said that this guy's surely a magician, something like that. I can't remember whose channel that was on, but I remember listening to that.
It might be a contradiction within the Quran itself that you're talking about.
I mean, was that maybe it was in? Did you guys talk about that in Clubhouse, Chris, or was that on a YouTube show?
No, I'm not sure. I heard it on Clubhouse, but I think it was the argument between the Pharaoh saying something or the chief saying something, but it was the same thing
within the Quran.
Yeah. So it was a contradiction. Who's speaking? Was it the Pharaoh or was it the chief priest speaking?
Yeah, it's either a contradiction or a variant, which makes it
a contradiction. That is a contradiction within the Quran.
Oh, okay.
Well, I mean, okay. Well, all right. So there we go. Let's just, when we start talking about perfect preservation, and we see that you have all of these different Qurans. I mean, how many different Qurans did Hatun come up with? Was there 37?
37, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, And I get this. You're exactly right, Chris. On this is when you say that. Well, if they can no longer use this, because one of the arguments is, well, how many different Bible versions do you have? I mean, is it the one with 66 books, or is it the one that 81 books, or what? And so they would take that one away from.
But that's not the argument, though. This is the problem: is that these are Arabic Qurans. They're 37 Arabic Qurans that have these variants from each other. It's a lot different with the Bibles.
The thing is, we kind of say that the Bible was perfectly preserved in the Greek and the Hebrew, and the thing is, most Muslims haven't even read the Bible. They don't even know what language it's written in. So it's like they don't even know, like they haven't even read it. So it's like, why on earth are you kind of pointing to something you've never even read on the it's stupidity. Like if I was to bring up a Bible manuscript to them, they wouldn't have a clue. Like if it was like the Daniel Wallace's site, like the Center for New Testament Manuscripts, and bring up something like P45. Like you show that, okay, where on earth is it corrupted?
You're breaking up there, Dominic.
You're breaking up, Dominic.
Like regarding
You're frozen. Yeah.
Yeah, he's frozen. And he just got a new computer too. You remember when we came back, that first show we did coming back, I was still using this dinosaur that I got sitting behind me here. And StreamYard did something that I don't know what they did, but the bandwidth was just completely out of control. And I was pausing and lagging, and I went on. I got a new computer, and this computer's doing fine. See, he's got the Wheel of Death. Do you see the Wheel of Death on Dominic there? Yep.
But the verse that they base that on is 279, and that verse says, "So woe to those who write the book with their hands, then say, this is from Allah to purchase gain by a small price. So woe to them for that, what their hands wrote, and woe to them for what they are earning." But here's the problem: it doesn't say what book.
Mm-hmm.
It says the book. That's it.
Right.
It's not specific on what book it's talking about.
Talmud.
So, yeah, exactly. It's the Talmud. But if you're just reading the text, you don't know that.
Nope.
So, there goes your explained in detail right out the window.
Well, let's just come back to the original premise, though. When you start talking about perfect preservation and this mantra that we keep hearing, that the Quran has been perfectly preserved, we know today, 2023, that that's simply not true, and we can prove it. Whereas if you back that up, let's say 20 years ago, were we able to do that 20 years ago? And the thing is no. So this is one of those other myths that we have been force-fed into believing. And unfortunately, they've tried to convince an entire, I don't know how many generations this is entailed. But now they've got entire generations of people believing that it's been perfectly preserved, and that if it's not, they're leaving their faith, just like Adam Seeker did. Okay, let's jump back over here to, let's see, do I have another one here? No. Okay. Does anybody have anything else they want to talk about perfect preservation on that?
Nope.
Let me put this on the side here. Okay.
So you've also got the fact that with the perfect preservation, that I mean, with the Bible, we can literally go from the Bible manuscripts directly to the Bibles that we have today. So we actually have like a timeline. With the Quran, you can't go from, say, the Quranic manuscripts to the Qurans that you've got today. You can't. There's no aspect of, like, you can't look up the Hafs and look up, okay, it contains that manuscript, and that manuscript. But with the Bible, you can actually do that. You can actually go back. Okay, we're using like P45, or we're using like the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Right.
Using
I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
Sure.
They don't have one complete manuscript before 1924.
What? Whoa.
They do not have one complete manuscript before 1924. That is a fact. And the reason why I know this is because Al-Fadi's doing his research on the manuscripts of the Quran.
So there's
And
okay. Hold on. Let me make sure I understand what you're saying here, because this. Okay, so even up to 1924, because the manuscript is just a hand copied version,
right,
of a book. So what you're saying is that even after the advent of the printing press, the earliest hand copied manuscript, hand copied Quran that they have is from 1924.
Is 1924, right? Have you ever heard about them taking a bunch of Qurans out and dumping them in the Nile? Have you heard about that?
I've heard about that, yeah, because it didn't.
And now you know why. Yeah, exactly. Now you know why.
I've heard the same thing that Ed is saying. That the Quran they got now was in the 1920s. Ed, was that Quran made by the Muslim Brotherhood? Because isn't that when they started?
Yes, it's from Egypt, and it was definitely written by those who were the Muslim Brotherhood of that time, 1924. Yes, absolutely. So that's a huge.
1928, so it's officially starts 1928, so it doesn't exactly work in a timeline, but there could have been those around them who were influential before the official start of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Yeah, that's a major, huge, gaping hole in the narrative.
Okay, and let's see. Okay, who is okay? Is this Dr. Kufar Phobia with "I'm too stupid to be present"?
You know it.
It's me. I don't think he's too stupid. I think he's just he's got too much dementia.
I saw it when I brought him into the room. This has got to be. Okay, this is not a political show. Today it's not, but yeah, I'm not going to go. Okay.
No, but they should release the comic edition of the Quran, or we should do our own different variants of the Quran that
we could probably do that. We could probably do a whole show on that.
Yeah,
that sounds like a plan. All right, let's move up to, let's see, was that the last one? That was the last one. Okay, a scientific miracle. Now, how many people, by just a voice vote here, and I'm just going to call on your name, and if the answer is yes, just come up on mic and say yes. If the answer is no, come up on mic and say no. How many people in here have heard an argument for the divine revelation of the Quran being that it has so many scientific miracles in it? Ed, have you heard this argument?
Yes.
Darcy, have you heard this argument?
I have, yes.
Sharon, have you heard this argument?
Yes.
Paul?
It always makes me laugh.
Okay. Chris?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and Kufar Phobia?
Absolutely.
Dominic?
Yes,
Isa,
I've heard this argument.
Isa, have you heard this argument before? Isa is abstaining from voting.
Isa's asleep.
Yeah, he just casually listens in too, so I get it. Okay, so we've all heard this argument from, it's a scientific miracle, and we have been, trying to show one of the things that, if you all remember, and I'm not sure if she listens to this show anymore or not, but she used to promote this show actually, was Gloria, whatever she went by. And one of the things where we were interacting on Facebook, going back and forth is that, well, I can show you that the Quran has been perfectly preserved, or not perfectly preserved. I can show you that all the scientific miracles in the Quran. And I'm like, okay, let's just give me your best one. And she kept obfuscating and not bringing up just one argument showing that the Quran is a scientific miracle, a miracle only Muhammad would know if Muhammad received this information from God. So here are some of the miracles that we are often told that we have to believe, these Muslim myths. Number one, the sun sets in a muddy pool of water. Now, I'm sure we've all heard this one, but who's heard? Okay, who in here has heard the rescuing device for this? Who in here can tell me what how Muslims are, how they deal with it?
Yeah, I've heard it.
It was said by Alexander the Great or something like that. They try to say that.
Say that one more time, Paul.
I've heard they try to say it was said by Alexander the Great. They're just
Dul
quoting Alexander the
Qarnayn,
Great.
right?
Dul
right,
Qarnayn, yeah.
Right. This is supposed to be Alexander the Great, and the verse goes is that Alexander the Great traveled so far to the west that he found the setting place for the sun, which is in a muddy pool of water, and there was a people that went around it. Now, I went there and I tried to buy some of that real estate that they have there because they have this view every afternoon, and they weren't selling it.
Was it a pretty hot price?
It was.
I wish everything was melting.
Yeah. So the argument that I usually hear, the rebuttal I usually hear from this is, they say, well, just imagine if that you go out and you're looking at the ocean, and that the sun goes down in the distance, that it looks like it's going down into the ocean, and that was the same way that it is described to us being that way. So that's the argument I normally hear.
Yeah, they want to insert the words "as if" the sun sets, and that's.
But both of these arguments ignore one thing.
It ignores God.
Allah is the one who says that this happens.
Right. Yeah. The
Yeah.
creator of the sun and the earth. Right. And the creator of the muddy pool of water too.
Can I just throw something logical out there? We
Yes,
might
we're
not
not on
even
this
have thought
program. I
about,
think
but we
we
might
allow
not
them.
have thought about it because we're logical people. But the sun doesn't go down.
This is
No.
true. This is true.
Exactly.
And I agree with well, okay, and it sets in a muddy pool of water. Well, I think this could be if you were trying to develop some type of apologetic or a if you're trying to develop some type of defense for this, excuse for this, you could say, well, you say that the sun rises every morning and the sun sets every evening, but the sun does not do it. This is just the rotation of the earth, and this is how we perceive it. And so this is how Alexander the Great perceived it. But if you're going to put this in a divinely inspired book, this is stupid. And I would also add,
again, because it's Allah that says it.
I would also add to this is that it also appears in the Tafsir. They're saying the same thing in the Tafsir, with the exception, I think Al-Jalalain does not endorse this idea that it literally happens, but Ibn Abbas does, and Ibn Kathir both endorse it. Plus, there is a supporting hadith that goes with this, where Muhammad's riding a donkey with some guy. I guess this is just what they used to do back then. Was ride around on donkeys, and he tells him, goes, "Do you know where the sun sets? It sets in a muddy pool of water." So even have Muhammad saying this in a hadith, and we know that the hadith are all true because why? We have the science of the hadith to fall back on.
Well, wasn't it even a tradition amongst the sailors? That the sun, when it set, you could see the little splash that it would make at the very end, as it was going down into the water. You'll even see Pirates of the Caribbean even portrayed that in the movie that they did. So that was always, and I think that's where they got it from. Was the sailors and everything saying that the sun looked like it splashed down into the water, and so Muhammad wanted to put his own spin on it.
Well, that makes sense because if you're out in the middle of the ocean, not that I spend any time out in the middle of the ocean, but if this is what you're seeing, and you have no land around you to give you any type of bearings, the only thing you're seeing is the sun, and as it's going down, as the earth is rotating, that it may give that appearance. I don't know, but the fact of the matter is that this demonstrates that the Quran is not a scientific miracle, but a joke for us to not to openly mock, but at least point out and say,
Well,
look,
it's a
if you want the
gift.
crown to be
It's-
perfectly
it's a gift
preserved,
you
all right,
can
that's fine. You can have
for
perfectly
mocking.
preservation, but the perfect preservation is a scientific joke. Go ahead, Paul. I'm sorry.
I would say it's a gift for mocking. I mean, it's given to us for free.
Well, that's the thing. People cannot stand to be mocked. I mean, if you ever want to know who you cannot criticize, who holds the power, it's those people that you're prohibited from mocking. And we clearly see here when we do a show like this that people don't like us mocking these things. They do crazy things.
Hey, Eric, before you move on, about the sun. My question for you, and I'm wondering if you could answer it, because you're such knowledgeable. So, would the sun really exist in Islam, since Allah enters into the lowest part or the lowest heaven every third of the night? Now we know that the world rotates, so it would be a third of the night somewhere in the world at all times. So would there actually be sunlight? Because Allah would always be down here. somewhere.
That's a good point, because if the sun sets in the mud, there won't be any sunlight. But the thing is, it would also have to be a very big pool, wouldn't it? Kind of like to be.
No, because when you look up, it only looks small.
No. But how big would the muddy pool have to be? I mean, if you have the muddy pool as like the size of
there's so many different things out there that you just don't know what to because in one part or was it hadith, you have the moon chasing the sun around, or by the sun chasing the moon around, and then the sun prostrating.
Yeah, they prostrate to Allah. You better
Prostrating.
believe they do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just
Right under the throne.
It's just crazy. Some of the things they come up with.
this-
This is
it's
exactly what you would think you would get from somebody that lived in the 7th century that had no access to any type of science at the time, let alone it being a miracle.
But does life cease to exist after the sun goes in the muddy pool? Because if the sun goes in the muddy pool, you have no aspect of photosynthesis or the aspect of life at all. So you don't actually have kind of any so you can't grow like plants or things like that. It would just like life on Earth wouldn't exist.
Well, for one thing, if the sun ever went into a muddy pool of water here on the Earth, the sun being I don't know how many millions of times bigger than the Earth, we'd all be dead anyway. So it's kind of a moot point.
Yeah, we'd be dead way before that settled in.
Yeah,
We'd fall into a muddy pool into the sun.
I would want it. I would be looking for someplace to go.
But if the sun did do that, it would also be the sun. I mean, what temperature would the Earth be? Well, because if the sun went to that kind of thing, it would make the whole
1920s before they published it.
It would make the whole Earth like a desert, literally, just from the
All right, what's the next one, Eric?
Okay,
exactly.
We beat that horse, I'm sure. Okay, the ecological cycle is explained in detail, and we all know what it says about the embryological cycle. It says that it starts off like a
lump of flesh,
clump of flesh, and then
Isn't this Kufar's favorite one?
Yes, it is.
Very well may be. All right, let him. Okay, Joe, I'm an idiot.
John.
I'm an idiot. Come on up and explain this one to us.
Joe,
Are you talking about the 96.2 or are you talking about 86.6 and 7?
The one that says that it starts off as a clump of flesh, then the bones form, then the flesh form around the bone.
Well, don't forget you got to have a blood clot in there too.
Yeah.
And you also got to have. You also got to have sperm coming from the breasts of a woman.
Then first of all, you start off as semen for 40 days or 40 nights. And
coming from the breast of a woman.
Yeah, there's lots of stuff before that. Yeah, your gushing fluids that come from between the backbone and the ribs. So it's the backbone of the man, and it's the breastbone or collarbone of the female. So you get these two ejaculating fluids when you get all excited and they get together, and then I guess that becomes semen. You hang out in the womb for 40 days or 40 nights because Allah doesn't know, and then you become a blood clot for another 40 days, and then you become a lump of flesh for 40 days, and then you get clothed with some, maybe some silk garments, and then Allah decides if he wants to keep going.
Well, what we want to do is the only thing I want to demonstrate is the fact that this is not a scientific miracle. This guy might have seen women have miscarriages, and this is something that somebody at that time would have perceived. It wouldn't have been a scientific miracle at all. Number one, because he doesn't get the cycle correct. That's the most important thing about it. And wasn't there some type of wasn't there a Greek it was a Greek physician or a Greek scientist had developed a
talking about Galen?
Yeah, there you go, Galen. He described basically the same thing.
Yeah, but they stole from Galen, they stole from Aristotle, and they stole from Hippocrates, because they all kind of pretty much say the same thing, and they all. I mean, they get some of the stuff right, but the majority is just wrong. And by the way, Chris, I'm trying to get a debate with Calamology. No, he's left. Yeah.
Oh no, I'm here. Good luck.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I put out a challenge. I want to debate a Muslim doctor on embryology.
Why would somebody want to do that? I just don't. I mean, when you clearly cannot. This is like Kenny trying to debate David Wood on whether or not it was okay for Muhammad to marry Aisha when she was 9 years old, the age of Aisha when she was 9 years old. It makes zero sense to try to do that unless you're going to intentionally be dishonest during the debate. And then I guess everything's all fair in love and war then. Okay, I have another one. We're not going to get through all these. We got to get going faster, guys. We have way too much knowledge here. You ever hear that? You have no knowledge, you kafir. I don't know how many times I've heard that. You have no knowledge. All right. Mountains or tent pegs?
Okay, that's not good.
Yeah, when I first started engaging with Stefania on this scientific miracle that we find in the Quran, this was the one that she brought up. Well, it says in the Quran that nobody knew how deep the mountains went, and they're like tent pegs because they go so deep into the Earth's surface. Who sees a problem?
That's a load of crap.
I mean, what is the problem with that? With that analogy,
because the one thing, you're not dealing with plate tectonics, because the whole aspect of mountains is to do with plate tectonics. So you've got problems with the aspect of a tent peg. It goes in directly rather than the aspect of kind of the aspect of
But doesn't a tent peg go into the ground, whereas a mountain pushes up out of the ground?
Yes, yeah.
But the reason why it pushes up,
because you have it going like a mountain would go like that, so essentially goes up, kind of more like that compared to like if you have a tent peg, it's more straight down.
It's one of the. Gosh, it's just so stupid. I don't even spend any time on it. But yeah, that was just dumb. Okay, what's another one here? Another one is stars or missiles. This is where the Quran says that stars are used as missiles to be thrown at jinn. Am I right on this? They're thrown at jinn when prayers are going up to Allah. So, number one, if a star was thrown at a jinn, a star is like our sun. That's what a star is our sun. So if that ever got that close to the human or to the Earth's atmosphere, we would all be dead. So it would not only kill the jinn that it was intended to shoot down, but it would also kill everybody else that's sending these prayers up. So that makes zero philosophical sense, makes zero theological sense, but it also makes zero scientific sense. Shooting stars are not stars. Shooting stars are objects entering into the Earth's atmosphere, heating up because of the friction and appearing like a star.
We just had one cruise by not too long ago, as a matter of fact, in comet form. The Green Horse.
Why do they explain comets appearing every so many hundreds of years if they've only been thrown? Or they got thrown like I mean, they can't explain comets.
Allah's all powerful. He knows. He can see the future. Okay, let's go to the next one. Let's see here. The Quran describes the Big Bang. Have you heard this one?
No, I haven't heard that one.
I have heard this argument before where the Quran perfectly describes the Big Bang, where everything's created ex nihilo and there was a beginning. And number one,
It does not describe an ex nihilo, doesn't it?
Well, I'm just telling you the claim.
Yeah.
But not the first off, the Big Bang, the inflation theory, all of this stuff, I don't consider real science to begin with. And because in order to get there, you have to suspend. I'm not sure how many different laws of physics are you have to violate or suspend in order to have this rapid inflationary theory or this Big Bang thing to begin with. So you're going to have to far exceed the speed of light. You're going to have to far exceed the formation of matter. You're going to have to violate the first, second, and third laws of thermodynamics. You have all of these things going on that for the Big Bang to be true to begin.
Well, the biggest problem is that most people don't know the Big Bang theory for what it says. It's creation of the first atom. The word creation is there.
Exactly. Where did that come from?
Well, this is my understanding, and this is the way that we were told to teach it, is that the universe began in an infinitesimal little dot. The entire universe was contained in a little dot, and then that dot exploded. Now, where that dot came from and what time and space that dot exploded into, well, we'll have to get back to you on that one, is what we're told. But again, so if you're going to say that the Big Bang, the Quran describes the Big Bang, well, then I would say, well, the Quran is scientifically laughable, because the Big Bang, when we look at it in of itself and start making scientific applications of natural law to it, it doesn't hold up either. You have to, in order to get all of these calculations, I think his name was Alan Guth. Was we think of Stephen Hawking's being this wizard smart, which he was, but it was Alan Guth that actually came up with this idea that you would have to suspend the laws of physics in order for this thing to occur, inflationary theory anyway, in order to get this thing to occur. But then you have so many other scientists that will come out and say that this is something that, because science is supposed to be, repeatable. Well, how you're never going to be able to repeat this. And even when you go back and try to retract or retrace what happened, you still can't do that. So the whole thing's a bunch of bunk as far as I'm concerned. Even if it does describe the Big Bang, which it doesn't, but let's pretend for a little bit. Okay.
Hold on a second. I think that whole Big Bang, well, first of all, Big Bang is a theory, so it's not etched in stone. And there are some competing theories that are going up against it. Like there's some scientists who don't believe that the universe is expanding, but that it expands and contracts. But the whole thing is, I think there's one verse that they translated that says Allah is the one who, created the heavens and he is expanding it. But the verse doesn't say that he's expanding it. It just says that he expanded it.
That very well might be the one.
There's a big difference. But also, in the Quran says that we were smoke. Well, there was no smoke.
Yeah.
Smoke implies that something that's organic combusted, like an explosion or something that, like when you light a fire. So they would have had to have been chemicals already existing that could combust. And at no time, just because something might look like smoke. See, that's the problem that I have with Muslims. They change the meaning of stuff to justify what they're saying. So if they read something in a book and it mentions smoke, they don't understand how you get smoke. You can't get smoke unless you explode something or you light something. And those have
in an oxygen environment.
carbon, right? You'd have to have oxygen,
You would know, yeah.
and then carbon and all that other stuff. So it's like, that's not the Big Bang. I have not read a book on the Big Bang that says we went through a stage of smoke. And
that would be a good laughing point if they did, and they didn't want to be laughed
And you got the problem because in one chapter it says that Allah created the earth first. In another chapter it says that he created the heavens first. Then you got the problem where they say that he created the earth in 2 days. No, I'm sorry, the earth in 4 days and then the rest in 2 days. I mean, how idiotic is that? That little old earth took 4 days to create, but all of the rest of the galaxies and all the other planets somehow only took 2 days. How does that work? Oh, bless you.
That's right.
Sorry.
There's
90
one
days is not consistent. Yeah.
All right.
Chapter 41 that
We're up to
gives
now.
the 6 days, and then chapter
Yeah.
79 that gives the 8 days.
Yeah, what is I'll tell you what the scientific miracle is that biological systems actually believe that the Quran is from God. That's the miracle.
Yes. Yeah. There you go.
I'm there with you.
All right.
I mean, come on, Eric. We got 81 million people supposedly that believe Biden is the president.
All right. Yeah. I'm not going to go. That's politics. And would you stop with the politics? Okay. Where was I? Okay. So the next one, the perfect example for all time. Now I'm just going to go through these really quick because I'm trying. Let me just say this: I am trying to get away from this constant criticism of Muhammad. And the reason why I'm kind of trying to get away from it is because it comes across as being so offensive to some people, to Muslims. And the intent here on this show is not to offend people. It is to provide an accurate critique of Muhammad. This is true. And it is to provide accurate information, to expose the truth of what happened back in the 7th century, supposedly happened back in the 7th century. But it's not to offend. But when you have somebody like this guy, as described in their own literature, it's kind of hard not to. If you think that, this guy was the perfect man for all time, well, no, he's not. Let's just go through a list here of things that Muhammad is said to have done during his lifetime. Number one, he robbed caravans, and he justified the robbing. Thou shalt not steal. You guys ever hear of that one? He justified the robbing because he says, well, when the Muslims were forced to make hijrah to Medina, they had to leave all their belongings. So this was just a way of them recouping their belongings from them pagans.
Wait a minute.
Two wrongs make a right.
Okay, they left. Well, they didn't have to leave anything according to the series. They packed everything and went. So that's just a big, yeah.
This is man has justified his sin since the beginning of time.
Like him, great.
Which is just the way of doing. Yeah. He robbed. What is this? Robbed caravans correctly. All right. Number two. He enslaved people. Now, if we were to look at our country's own history and we look at slavery, chattel slavery used in our country, we have, as a country ourselves, we have this stain of slavery on our head, with the blood of slavery on our hands. This is true. And what we do today as 21st century human beings is we recognize that this practice, number one, let me just back up here just a second. This practice of slavery was forced upon the colonists. Let's just make sure we're clear upon this. It was forced upon the colonists by you blokes in England, Dominic. You're king at that time.
Yes.
You're kings at that time. Forced it, and there was colonies would vote in their assemblies to ban slavery in their colony, and the king would come in and veto that ban. Why? Because there was just so much money being made with slavery. And then when we declared our independence from England, 7 of the initial 13 colonies in 1777 banned slavery, saying, look, we're not having slavery in our country or in our colony anymore. Why? Because it has been forced upon us by England. And we are the only country to go through a civil war, tore our guts out for 4 years, cost over 600,000 lives in order to end this practice. And oh, by the way, the abolitionist movement was a movement that came out of the second Great Enlightenment. So it was a Christian movement, to include England's banning of slavery with William Wilberforce. So all of these things that when we start talking about slavery and ending slavery is a uniquely Christian practice. Whereas if we look at what Muhammad did, Muhammad would fight wars and enslave women, children, and rape women and children, encourage his soldiers to do so, or at least not, if you're going to say, oh, he didn't encourage them. No, he did. But let's just pretend that he didn't. He allowed it and enabled them. And there are Sahih hadith that support this. And then he would himself owned, bought, sold slaves. And I know that, oh, he manumitted slaves. He did free a few slaves. This is true. But that did not end slavery in Islam. Slavery still exists in Islam today. You go to Libya today. You go to Mauritania today. Slavery still exists in Islam. The richest man that ever lived prior to Bill Gates and this who's a Bezos guy, whatever that guy, Amazon guy, was a slave trader, Manasseh Musa, from the kingdom of Mali. He spent a great amount of his wealth proliferating Islam and building all of these madrasas and mosques all throughout his kingdom. And he was just following the Sunnah of Muhammad, which was practicing slavery.
Yeah, at the very core.
Go ahead, Darcy.
At the very core.
They say that slavery is outlawed. They also have in their constitution that Sharia is the law of the land, and Sharia allows for slavery still. Sorry,
it does. It's in the Reliance of the Traveler. Absolutely, Darcy. What were you saying? I didn't. You kind of came and broken up.
Okay, that slavery at its very core is just human trafficking.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly what it is, and we would all agree, from a Christian perspective, that is wrong. From an American perspective, of course, we would agree that it's wrong. But from a Christian perspective, we would agree that it's wrong. And I know that the Bible has slavery in it. It's not the same. And when people try to make that argument, it's sick. It really is. What was that?
It's indentured servitude. It's not chattel slavery.
Yeah. Much of it was indentured servitude. And when we look at people migrating from Europe during the colonial period, and even after the colonial period, they would sell themselves in the form of indentured servitude. What?
The Irish were slaves too. But okay, back to the black slavery. Weren't the Muslims behind that?
They were practicing it. Yeah. They were practicing it with the Portuguese. The Portuguese were exploiting. They were transporting African slaves into Arab countries. The trans-Saharan slave trade going eastward was twice the size of the transatlantic slave trade going westward. Yeah, so yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay.
Also, some articles where they've actually caught some slavers in the United States.
There have been some examples of that, right? Yeah. And were they a bunch of Buddhists that were doing this, or what?
I don't think so.
Yeah, it's amazing when we look at that. Not that we want to say that, just by somebody's name, but it's
have all been from Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, and that's you're right. What they're doing is it's still practiced. Let's just put it that way. It is still practiced today in a lot of the Islamic world, and it's sad. And the reason why it is still practiced is because it is Sunnah. It is what Muhammad did. Okay, can we move on? Can we move on? We're going to move on, whether or not we get permission or not. Here we go. The next one. He raped and encouraged the rape of captured women. Again, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but when we look at what your right hand possesses, we see this in several of the battles where women were divided. I mean, just what was the name of that city where they took was it Kaibar, where they slaughtered all the Banu Qurayza tribe? And they slaughtered all the men and kept all the women and parceled the women
No, you're
out.
talking about
Yeah, that's Skybar.
no, Kaibar is the battle.
Well, it was the Banu Qurayza. I know it was the Banu Qurayza tribe.
Banu Quraysh tribe that they wiped out, and they killed all the men and made the women and the children sex slaves, basically.
Right. Well, and the requirement, in order, if you were a male, to keep from being killed, wasn't whether or not you were against the Muslims. It's if you had gone through puberty or not.
Yeah.
If you had one pubic hair, they killed you.
Yeah, and that just, oh my gosh. Anyway.
Yeah, that was between 600 and 900 people that were beheaded.
Yeah. Okay, let's keep this freight train going. He murdered and had people murdered. I've done several shows on this. When we talked about the Sunnah of Muhammad, this is going to be in my book, which is going to be published in 2032. It's going to outline a lot of the things that are described in the Sirah, in the Hadith literature, where people would criticize just for criticizing. I could see in wartime you might want to execute people that are committing treason against you. Okay, that's fine. But the people that he had killed were simply criticizing him, and so this tells you how thin-skinned this guy was, and this again sets a standard of conduct. This is Sunnah, and since it's Sunnah, this is where we get things like Charlie Hebdo occurring, and all the fallout from that. This is where we get what was that place where they went and they had to draw the Muhammad contest?
Which
that was in Texas, wasn't it?
It was in Texas. It was outside of Dallas. Garland. There we go. Garland, Texas is where you get two guys from Phoenix, Arizona, drive from Phoenix clear to Dallas to start whacking these people at this Draw the Muhammad contest. This is where you get this. This is where any form of criticism of Muhammad is viewed as apostasy, and apostasy or blasphemy, and blasphemy is considered a form of apostasy, and apostasy is punishable by death. Okay. Let's go to the next one. The next one is what? He married his daughter-in-law. Now, okay, this is...
I'm sorry, that's just gross. I'm sorry. It is just gross.
Yeah, and for some reason, he gets a divine revelation. The God of the universe provides a divine revelation to Muhammad to do this so as he could set an example to show that it's okay to marry the former wives of your adopted sons. Who in here has ever known anybody? Who in here has ever known anybody who's had an issue where people would go through some type of legal battle, and in as reprobate as our country has become, in legalizing things and saying things are perfectly constitutional to do. Who has ever heard of somebody wanting to marry the divorced wife of their son or their adopted son? Has anybody known anybody or been in a situation to know anybody like this? Okay, so would there be a reason why somebody would have to set an example to say that this is permissible? If nobody's ever heard of this happening before.
Well, he had to set an example because it was against their culture, what he was doing.
Well, there's a reason why it's against the culture, because it's gross. It's icky.
Yes.
It's a perversion of the institution of marriage.
And then at the same time, he killed another thing. He killed adoption.
And one of the most human things we do is we adopt other people's children if somebody, if the parent dies or is unable to take care of them. And he did away with that. It's just okay. Let's go to the next one. We're almost out of time, folks. We got to get going here. Muhammad committed adultery. this is where he is caught. This is where he's caught in his wife's bed, Hafsa's bed, I believe it is. He's caught with Mary the Copt. And once he's caught, he, cries, please, please forgive me. I'll never do it again. He didn't want Aisha to find out, is from what I understand the way this thing rolled. But then, the God of the universe provides Muhammad a revelation saying, why I've given you this slave woman, your wife, your right hand possesses her. So why are you making promises to these wives of yours that you won't do this again? Oh man, here we are. Hey, you're right. Woody Allen.
Oh, God.
George Harris of the Beatles. Way to go, Gabriel. Good dig. Good find. But all those guys are sickos. And isn't George Harris from England or something?
Yeah.
Sorry, Dominic. I didn't mean to go there.
Well, no,
Hey, that's where my family's from a long ways back.
Yeah.
weren't the Beatles from not England, but
Scotland,
man.
Ireland,
No.
all them great islands.
No, hold on.
Harrison. It was George Harrison. George Harrison.
Liverpool.
Oh, yeah, that's yeah, okay. Okay. That's just sick thinking about that. But this is Sunnah, so we have to look at what this perfect example for all time did. Let's go to the next one. He was a child spouse abuser. With that, what I mean by that is that he received a divine revelation that enabled men to beat their wives if they fear, not if women are disobedient to their husbands, but if they fear disobedience. It's right there in the Sharia. We've read this several times, Paul, where we've seen that this is provided for because it's in the Quran, where it says that you admonish them. What is it? You admonish them, then you ban them to separate beds, and then you beat them. And it doesn't say beat them lightly, or it doesn't say
It's
beat
only
them
if you think they are going to. It doesn't matter if they've done something bad.
Yeah, this if you fear rebellion is what it says. So this again, he was a abuser, and he hit Aisha. He hit her in the chest because she followed him one night, or she thought he was catting around the camp there, I guess, and
She busted him.
Yeah, she punched her in the chest. Pow! Take that. Anyway, and then lastly, but certainly most, not the least, is that, and this is what I just can't get past that, and spent way too much time and breath and capital discussing that. And the fact of the matter is that what this guy did to that little girl is unforgivable. You just cannot celebrate the life of a man who not only did that just one time, saying, okay, well, I'm just gonna do this one time. He married this girl and did this every single time.
Was
18.
She died until he died at the age of 18. At her age of 18.
Yeah, from poison.
So
She probably fed him.
Yeah. So these are some of the Muslim myths that we are told that we're required to believe.
There is one more thing.
What?
I came across this claim again that Muhammad, even though he did all these things, he became sinless. That was a claim they came across.
Yeah.
No,
you're right. This is what they believe. They believe that all the prophets are sinless once they become prophets. So everything that they did prior to that is okay. The problem with that is that Muhammad was had already been receiving his revelations, had already become a prophet. So how can you say that type of behavior is not sinful?
Yeah, not to mention that once sin is settled in, the next thing to happen is death.
Yeah. Yep, I agree. Okay, so I'm going to close down the show, guys. Again, I appreciate everybody coming here on Sunday, people that were in chat. I appreciate all the comments and the facts that you guys write in there. It's always great to read that as we're going along. And everybody that participates on the panel, again, I know that you guys could be doing all kinds of things on your Sunday afternoon and coming here and spending time here and having these discussions. Means a lot. And I appreciate every single one of you for coming out here and doing that, even if you're not an idiot. When you do this,
well, that's a guy with dementia. He's not an idiot. He's just got dementia.
I don't. He made a comment. Was it last week? He goes, "I might be a white boy, but I ain't stupid."
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And what about the comment where he said they took his brain out to see if he? What was it? Something about it? He went to the hospital or something, and they took his brain out to see if he was stupid.
Well, I don't know, but some the things that this guy. I don't know. I don't even want to. I could spend all night talking about this guy.
Yeah.
How disgusted I am with. And it's not him personally, but I could just talk about his policies and just forget about his physical abilities to execute that office.
Why don't we do a show on it?
Well, that just goes to show you that how angry our Lord is with us.
Yeah, he gave us that man. But he just lied because I was thinking of doing a video because on my Twitter feed, now I don't know if it's him or somebody in the White House, but whoever was an idiot that said they were making, I guess, fun of Trump, and he was saying that when he took office, which was January 2021, that there were 18 million people on unemployment. Now, how can you have 18 million people on unemployment when the unemployment on January 2021 was only 10 million? Are you allowed to double dip and get two checks? Because if you only have 10 million people unemployed, that's the most that you can have on unemployment.
Well, see, they don't have spreadsheets that are 50 columns long like you do. I mean, that's who actually tracks all of these things, so they can get away with it because you're common Joe like me. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know how they exactly arrive at those numbers, but I do know that they're easily manipulated.
It's a lie, and I just did the job numbers, and every month when I do that spreadsheet, I'm just left scratching my head like, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah, and that's exactly what's going on. That's exactly what, as Ed alluded to. I think this is, and I hate to say it, but I think it is God's judgment on our country. And God help.
We deserve it. I got to tell you, man.
Let's just pray that people hear the voice of the Lord, and it forces them to wake up and realize how evil this ideology that are being pushed, not only through politics, but also through our schools, and in our society at home. Okay, guys, thank you again so much for coming, and we will see you not next week. I'm going to upload. As a matter of fact, now we'll upload that Bob the Builder video next Sunday. So if y'all want to come on by and take a look at it and see what was done during there, it was great fun. And then we'll be back the following Sunday, which will be the 26th, I believe it is, and we might talk about Joe Biden.
Cool.
All right. God bless y'all. We'll see you then.
God bless you.
God bless.